Hey, frugal friends, and I got a question for you. Are cheap seeds worth it? And by cheap seeds, I usually mean ones that look like this. They are usually from American Seed Company, although there are other cheaper brands, and they're usually very inexpensive to buy. These came from Walmart, and they were 20 cents each. And sometimes I've seen them in varying places and different prices. The white package ones I think are at the dollar store for about 4 for $1. Again, these were 20 cents. And then I've seen them as cheap as, say, 10 for $1 on sale at Walgreens, etc. So since these range in price from about 10 to 25 cents each seed packet, that's what I'm calling the cheap seeds. So a lot of people would maybe assume, well, aren't these bad if they're so cheap? And some other people may think, why would you spend more when these are so inexpensive? So I want to give you my opinion on these quickly today. So the first thing that you'll notice when you go to look for the seeds in any big box store, say Walmart or wherever else, is that when you look at the sections of seeds, they'll have like the Burpee seeds or the Martha Stewart or the Fairy Morse or whatever, and they're usually large sections of seeds. When you go to these cheap seed sections, they're usually really small. And when you really look through the different varieties, the first thing you'll probably notice when you do see the varieties is that there's a very limited selection, which is probably the biggest negative to these types of seeds. So you'll look in the section and it'll be like either one or two varieties of whatever it is you're looking for. It'll be like one or two tomatoes, one or two, of this or that flower, one or two, sweet peppers, one or two spicy peppers, that sort of thing. And then maybe only like one cucumber or one, type of zucchini or whatever. So there's a very limited selection. So if somebody is looking for specific types or varieties, or say you're just looking for heirlooms or, whatever, then this may not be a good solution because of the super limited selection when it comes to these types of seeds. The second thing that you may notice when you look at them is that the packets have a little bit less seed and sometimes quite a bit less seed than the others. So looking at this sunflower packet right here, it has 1.25 grams, and I just opened this and counted the seeds, and there was 18 seeds in this seed packet. When you look at the other ones, they're usually like 2.5 grams or so, and so it would be roughly double the seeds from, say, Burpee or whatever, but those ones would also cost like $1.50, so they're not double the price. So, there's definitely something to consider there. So if the American Seed Company has, the variety that you're looking for, and you don't have a lot of space anyway, like I don't plan to plant a huge hedge or row of, mammoth sunflowers. Mammoth sunflowers get really big anyway and should be planted somewhat far apart. And so 18 seeds already is probably a lot of seeds for what I have. So that's something to consider. If you don't have a large amount of space, then, you maybe don't overlook these types. And then the last thing to think about is the fact that when I have used these over time, sometimes I have noticed that the seeds are broken or that they'll have some foreign material in there. They'll be like mostly all seeds but then a small stick or something like that, and I'm sure that got weighed in with the seeds. And honestly, for the cheap price, I really don't find that to be too big of an issue. If, even 10% of the seeds are broken, they're 20 cents, 10 cents, 25 cents, depending on where you get them from again. So, again, I haven't really seen this to be a big deal, but I do want to mention it. So those would be the main negatives that I would say. And then another thing that I've actually heard and haven't really experienced so much for myself is that some people claim that these seeds maybe have a little bit lower of a germination rate. Again, at the same price that these are, if 80% of them grow instead of 90 or 95, but their cheaper price tag, it kind of, takes care of that. So yeah, that would be the last negative. So let's move on to the positives. The positive, in my opinion, is the first one, is the fact that they are so darn cheap. When I first started gardening, this was pretty much all I could afford was the super, super cheap seeds because we were on a super, super tight budget. So being able to walk over to the local Walgreens and get them 10 packets for $1, I could spend $2 and get 20 packets of seeds to start a garden with. And they were actually pretty successful. So the fact that they are very inexpensive is obviously a huge plus in my opinion. Honestly, I think they're still very good. I honestly think that they actually have a decent, germination rate and that they grow and produce, just like all the rest of the seeds do, and they're pretty good. So, I would honestly say even over time, I have had some that have actually worked out better than some of the others. Let me give you an example. So I planted some cilantro. It actually wasn't this, but I just so happened to have a packet of it here. And I planted 2 different types of cilantro. I got one from the American seed and it was listed as Mexican cilantro. And then I got one from Burpee and it was just like cilantro / coriander, which of course the coriander is the seed of the cilantro plant. But anyway, so I planted both of them side by side in a little rocky area that I had, like it was a rock garden, and I had some herbs in there and whatnot at our last house. And the first one looked like it was a clear winner because they immediately germinated, they grew, but the heat of the summer came and they immediately died. The other ones took a little bit longer, the American seed ones, they took a little bit longer to germinate, but when they did, they held through the summer heat like you would not believe. So while I had the first one, you know, the cilantro, for like 3 weeks, the other one I had cilantro for the whole entire summer. And they finally did, you know, go to seed and whatnot, and then they replanted themselves. So when I planted them, I only planted them once, and then several years, you know, after, they would just grow, go to seed, and then the next year they would come back. They would just go to seed, and then come back. They would self-seed. And even to this day, we were just over at our old house the other day getting some things we had left behind, and sure enough, here's the rock garden with, you know, the cilantro patch that we had left behind, and my daughter was all picking them and eating them because she loves cilantro. So in that regard, I would say the actual cheaper one was the clear winner over the others. So I'm not saying that every time it's a better variety, but I have had instances where I was very impressed with the way that they actually grew and whatnot. So in my final answer, are the cheap seeds worth it? Honestly, I'm going to say yes, depending on the situation though. If you can find the variety that you're looking for, or if you're not picky about what, you know, specific thing that you're looking for, if you just want to grow beans, maybe look at the beans they have and try them out and see if they work for you, because they may. And I would just, as a quick example, want to show you this little pea garden that I planted a while back. I got 1 packet of 20-cent, you know, pea seeds, and I planted it in here, and I actually overseeded it, expecting them not all to germinate. And so now they're actually overplanted, so I need to thin this out some. And I didn't even use the whole packet, so I ended up using like 3/4 of the packet. I overseeded them, and they're still growing very well and need thinned. So if this is any example right here, you can actually grow some pretty decent stuff on a very tight budget with these cheap seeds. So there you go. Hopefully that video was helpful to you. I'm Frugal Green Girl, and we'll see you next time.